Are you an entrepreneur or ready to become a boss? Welcome to Hawaii Boss, the business podcast made in Hawaii, where you will hear from island movers and shakers on who they are and their impact on our state. And now, step into the office of your host for Hawaii Boss, David Pettijohn.
Aloha, Hawaii Boss podcast crew listening in out there, wherever you listen in and get your information. But especially if you want information about Hawaii and business leaders in Hawaii and also leaders in the community. Today, we're so fortunate to be in the boss's office of David Miyashiro, of the founding executive director of Hawaiikidscan, not-for-profit organization that assists and has a vision for the future of education in Hawaii. And we're excited to have you with us, David. Aloha.
Aloha, David. Thanks so much for having me. Great to chat with you. And yeah, it's an honor to be featured on podcasts. It's had so many great folks come before.
Sure. Well, hey, we come to the most important people. That's why we're here. We're going straight into the boss's office because what you're doing. Everybody's got their own vision of how they're going to apply themselves, their vision, their work, and their effort every day. How do I apply myself to change the world or to be myself? And a lot of times, if they express themselves through this work. So tell us about your work that you're doing now with the Hawaiikidscan, and then we're going to drive in and see how you got there.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like I'm, one of the luckiest guys in the world. I've truly found an opportunity to marry the passions and the interests I have with the experience and the skills that hopefully I've gained over my professional career. So through Hawaiikidscan, which has been around since the summer of 2017, the time flies. But I get to work on improving educational opportunities for children, which honestly, I think is one of the most important things we can do as a community. And the way that we go about that work, I think is just as important. We both work at the community level with kids and with families to stand up different kinds of programs to help them out, whether or not it's access to free Wi-Fi so they can continue their learning, or learning supplies and funds for things like tutoring. Then we also work at the systems level. We work with our legislature, Board of Education, Department of Education, to try to find long-term systemic changes so that we don't see the same problems happen over and over again. So I love it. We get a little bit of everything. And, honestly, I haven't had a boring day since I've started this job.
Awesome. Well, listen, as a parent of children who've gone through the education system here in Hawaii, my youngest daughter, who's 12 now, has exclusively gone to school in Hawaii. And, there's some challenges as part of, there's different, there's private schools and public schools. As you look across that spectrum, where do you see for you in your work, where do you see some of the challenges or the gaps where you can start assisting the most, or you see trend lines where there's, opportunities to make the most impact?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned you're a dad, because I have a son now who's just a little bit over 1 year old. And even though I've been a professional educator, by training, to me, it all changes when you actually have a child of your own and you feel how personal these issues are, right? Like
Sure.
the time is, that clock is ticking fast, and you only have so much time to make sure that they are set up in the environment that they need to have the life that they want to live, right? So when I look across our school system, I think we've got to be honest about, I think there are some, red alarms blaring right now when we look at data in Hawaii, for example, that we are a state that continues to lose population.
Mm-hmm.
Never want to be on that side in that group of states. And it's a lot of it is our kids are leaving and they are not coming back. And so when I think about my son, who, he's got many more years before we've got to worry about that. But I think about what are the things that he needs to experience through his schooling so that if he wants to stay in Hawaii, he's got an opportunity to live a great life, have a great career, raise a family, whatever it is he wants to do. But those changes have to start now. And that means that kids need more hands-on learning opportunities when it comes to work, that they need to be thinking sooner and more, sophisticated in terms of what kind of careers that they want. Because again, that time goes by so fast, and there's a lot that we got to address.
some of the things that your organization does, like you said, some of the maybe access to internet or different things. What are some of those things that maybe you have an assessment when you go into a situation, a family, whatever, like, okay, if you have this, this, and this, is that your role in your organization, sort of looking at family to family, or both systemic too, or you have some examples of some of the work that you're moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at it as a bit of we try to start from the system level, right? And ask big questions. Like, so when, we're almost at the anniversary of everything kind of shutting down, right? The 2-year anniversary.
Yes.
And when the pandemic first hit, one of the first things that we did was we reached out to educators that we know who are working with those families every day and could see some of the challenges, because, I don't know how it felt for you, but I mean, it felt kind of overwhelming when you looked at just how big of a challenge we were facing with this pandemic. And so what was interesting to me in those kinds of conversations was that educators were pointing out, hey, we've got devices, we have laptops we can give out, but the kids bring them home and they can't use it to access the internet, right? So that's now a very expensive paperweight that you're most likely going to send back to your school. So through those conversations, we were able to, launch the Wi-Fi on Wheels project, which at its height through the pandemic had 11 different sites running across 4 different islands. And it still continues on today, where we have 6 sites that we're hoping to continue through 2023. But it's really started with the question of, what do you guys see as the biggest issue right now? And us drawing upon the partnerships and all the relationships we have to see if we can do something to actually help the community. So from there, it's figuring out, where are the specific needs, and then trying to make sure that we can bring a solution to the table.
Well, that's so neat. It has that like Meals on Wheels feeling. Again, what do you say, internet on wheels?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it kind of reminds me of the old bookmobile. I don't know if that's something that you'd ever seen growing up, where the library came around the neighborhood and you went in and got some different books and things. Again, maybe I'm dating myself, but again, I think, but this is what, folks need. They want access, but just access alone. Now they had to learn, all these kids, and I saw it in my own kids too. They have to learn this new platform for online learning, and the time frame when they have to turn on in things, and having to navigate through this when they first lost a year of everything, and now they're trying to navigate through where it's hybrid now and all these different things. And I think there's a lot of kids out there maybe lost.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's kind of a once in a generation situation, right? I think there were a bunch of efforts to try to at least introduce some sort of smaller distance learning opportunities to kids before the pandemic. And then it's this massive crash course for everybody, right? 180,000 kids in our public school system now, all trying to learn this new way of learning and teaching, and
let alone the teachers learning
exactly. Yeah. It's funny. In my work, I found that, there's a wide range of kind of individual comfort when it comes to using technology, right? I mean, you can see that generationally, give a kid a smartphone and a lot of those kids can pick it up and they know exactly what to do, but it's a process to help folks to learn and understand. And so I think that's where, now that we've had this experience where everybody had this crash course, I think the question is, are there good things that we can keep from this experience? And is it a way to bring new flexibility into learning that we haven't had a chance to do before?
Right, but and yeah, so trying to reassess now. I don't know if that's really what people. I guess we have to reassess now. We're retesting everybody right now to see what happened to us the last 2 years, and I'm not sure if we can get accurate testing still. We're like, but now schools aren't taking essay. They're waiving SAT scores for a minute here because we just kind of all got just smashed and hammered. So everyone's still trying to recover. It feels like.
Yeah, and it's not like just flipping a light switch, right? And then we're back to normal. It's going to be a process. And so one of the things that we're really focused on is, how do we make sure that kids get the support they need to feel like they're caught up, right? And so if that means more tutoring, more after school and summer opportunities, I think we'll keep sounding the alarm and drumming on that, keeping that beat strong for the next couple of years, because it's something as disruptive as we just went through. It's going to take extra thought and care to make sure that all of our kids and families are where they need to be.
Right. And yeah, the parents too are on a steep learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
You know, now I've got to listen, I've got already trying to keep up at work. And now I've got to go into my kids, school plan and evaluate if they've got their homework in. And if you've got 3 kids, you're trying to track all this stuff. But, listen, that's just looks like it's supposed to make it easier for us, but sometimes it feels like it complicates things.
Exactly. But, I think what makes me excited is, for the most part, the story hasn't been written yet. So I think there's a lot of things that community members and partners can do together to really make sure that kids do have great experiences and opportunities coming out the next couple of years.
So listen, not everybody gets into education. As soon as they see the last day of senior high school, they don't want to see a high school or another school again. But somehow there's some special educators out there, and that want to that can see the potential in children and young adults, I guess, as they continue to. And if you have a vision for a future for Hawaii, again, like you said, you're worried about all these kids leaving, and similar to Japan and Korea are having less children that around to be able to support their economy. It creates an economic issue really for Hawaii. So how do you said you look systemically, how do you deal with government agencies that are, trying to discuss this as well? How do you engage that way?
I think what's unique about us and what we do is, we're tiny when it comes to, comparing us to like the UH system or the Department of Education. But I think what we hopefully can bring to the table is, I feel like we really enjoy, we're good at looking what's Hawaii doing well, what's happening around the nation, are the things that we can learn from, because very rarely do you ever have to be the state that's reinventing the wheel. A lot of times there's stuff you can learn. And so what we found is really interesting is there's been a big effort nationally to help kids and internationally. When you look at states, you look at countries like Switzerland and Germany, kids are graduating from those high schools really, really well prepared for careers and knowing at a deep level, what is it that they are good at? What do they like to do? And they've had multiple experiences before they graduate to be prepared in those fields. And I think in Hawaii's case, we have a lot of cool schools who are doing innovative things, and they're launching models like career pathways in schools.
Right.
But we're still, when you look at the big picture, we're still kind of a policy toddler in terms of where the work can go. And so what I think is really interesting is how over the next couple of years, we can work with our different departments to try to make it possible so that kids have more meaningful experiences in school. And it's not just random, or it's not just, they're doing hands-on learning just for fun, but it's actually tied to real career skills and goals.
Right. Yeah. So tell me about that. What do you think it's, again, it seems like the maybe misplaced vision and drive to enjoy, go to college. And we've sort of gutted the trades programs out of the high schools and things like that. What's your thoughts there? I think there's a lot of value in being able to have a productive sort of, creative workforce in that way that can build the things that we all imagine, I guess, we want to have in our lives here in Hawaii. Do you engage in that? What's the feeling out there related to trades, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, my belief is kids should have multiple quality options as they progress through school. And so, they should be having hands-on real exploration earlier on. And a lot of the research shows that when it comes to fields where, you have underrepresented groups, let's just take computer science for an example. There's a gender gap that's existing in computer science for quite a while at the school level and at the industry level. And, the research has been pretty clear that when girls can get hands-on learning with technology and computer science starting in elementary school, they're far more likely to continue, take those higher level courses in high school, and then maybe even major in computer science when they hit college, right? Or maybe they're good enough that they want to go straight out and try to work in the industry and maybe get an associate's degree or something like that. Right. But a lot of that exposure has to happen earlier and earlier, especially when kids haven't had an opportunity to know somebody who's worked in those fields. So that's something that we've worked on through legislation in the past couple of years, is to try to bring things like computer science education to the younger levels so that kids aren't just using an iPad, to fool around and have fun, but they're understanding the basics of coding and thinking about how to use technology in a way that's going to give them tremendous career opportunities as they get older. So, it's a bit of a push and pull kind of relationship with our departments, but I mean, we've seen some real progress in the last couple of years. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic.
Well, yeah, there's some fundamental things I think in today's modern workforce that kids have to do. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to know how to code, but certainly to navigate themselves through like this type of thing, present information across this digital platforms. And there's just, it appears that, generating, all the digital content and there's great programs at KCC and different things that, again, creating this media. So it's not just, you're not going to have to sit at code and that, but being exposed to the creative art or the creative ability of all these tools, rather than just, it's like you're in people. I think for some people, I don't know, maybe it's just me when they're thinking, I'm going to be a coder, I'm sitting in a dungeon, like 80 hours of code, and I don't know, that's what it just, but there's actually things as you're naturally understand it, like you said, from when you're young, then it just becomes a part of you as just like when you had to do typing class, I, J, I, that pinky going back and forth and keyboard training. It's the same thing, is that there's this sort of standard of, I guess, digital capability that we should have at a younger age.
For sure. And, I'll take a second to shout out some organizations I think are doing a great job. One being Purple Night, which I'm not sure if you've heard of them before, but
I have not.
I think they do some awesome work, really kind of blending culture and technology. And so you think about, traditional mo'olelo and stories, and kids are actually, learning game design skills and, creating games based on some of those stories. And it's such a beautiful way to merge, I think, our traditional knowledge with, some of this more Western technology, right? And I think kids have the potential to come up with cool ideas and cool products that we can't even think about. I mean, I went to a demo maybe 3 or 4 years ago at Campbell High School, where the kids were showing off some of the apps they had designed. And, it's pretty sophisticated level stuff. I remember one was a platform where, it helps you with digital tours. So if you're downtown, you've got this app and it's loaded with all sorts of great information. So you could be a tourist coming from anywhere, and you've got at your fingertips, right, this great sense of what the community is like. And so I think these kids are capable of really, really creative ideas. And so we just need to pair the ideas with the skills so they can actually see them come to life, right?
Right. And that's the kind of support these to use technology and things. But again, there's some other kids that maybe don't feel that way. There used to be classes for making clothes and things. And again, it was more, the girls did this and the boys did this. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think, but those skills seem to be, we've outsourced them all over the place, but we don't know how to do some of these basic things. I don't know if there's, how the school, it feels like it's all based on tech. Let's move forward with tech. Everybody's tech, but then, it's basic other types of stuff. How do you see that working in education?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, especially here in Hawaii, we have some great programs to get kids out, into fish ponds and onto farms, right? And actually see in real life how some of these things come together. Again, I'll shout another company I saw called Smart Yields. And I thought it was so interesting when I went to their demo, how they were talking about, technology as being this really great support for traditional agriculture and a way to drive sustainability by, knowing how much water is wasted or conserved, right? And so I think that's where there's, again, I look to these kids who are going to be working in fields and coming up with ideas that I can't even imagine right now, so it's really just how do we tap into that, and they can see how all these different pieces connect in their lives.
Right. So these, you think of education, it's sort of altruistic, and we're all for education, but it's big money. So let's talk for a second. I know it's a little shift here, but education is a business. You shout out to a couple of organizations, and they don't, live off of good wishes and hopes and dreams. So because it does cost money to get these resources to bear on folks. How does that work in education and in Hawaii? Is everyone's, kind of going for the government, trough, federal, state? How does it work?
Wow. Yeah. A bit of a complicated answer.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just tell us in two or three sentences how the education system in Hawaii works. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
A little loaded, but as far as I guess maybe to distill it a little better, what pathways do you think are most available for us right now as well, try to work our way through this?
Great question.
And what government and non-government resources are available? Maybe that's one.
Great question. It's interesting. Education, I think one of the reasons it can feel overwhelming sometimes is, you're looking at these big multi-billion-dollar budgets, right? And you've got a big chunk of state funding. It's, one of the biggest items in the budget every year. You have federal funds that come in to support, especially with the impact of COVID. There's been, $400 million plus that have come to Hawaii specifically in federal funds to support with education. But then you've got so many great community and school-based projects that oftentimes are fueled by, public-private partnerships and philanthropic support. And so I think what I see as a big opportunity is when we think about our employers and, this potential workforce that we're nurturing right now in our schools, is there a good way to help align some of the funding so that the employers can feel like they're putting some skin in the game? And it's not we're offering internships or, these hands-on learning opportunities because it's a great photo op and, the kids look cute wearing white coats, but it's really a talent acquisition strategy that starts while kids are, maybe even in middle school. And I think if we have that approach, it's really a win-win-win for everybody. And, I think about, examples we've seen in states like Arkansas. You wouldn't think about it, but Arkansas is pretty much the national leader in computer science education because their governor made a commitment, years back that we have this big opportunity as Arkansas to have a really sophisticated and well-trained workforce because we can all be on the same page. And, oh, by the way, if we do that, maybe we can attract some big companies out there because we can offer a cost of living that Silicon Valley can't, right? And so they've seen that. And as far as I know, they've been pretty successful and have had a lot of great, relationships with some of these big employers. So, again, Hawaii is not necessarily competing with California or Florida, but these smaller states, Idaho, Arkansas, Delaware, I think, we're very much trying to keep up with them. And, we're doing some stuff good, but we're missing some opportunities, unfortunately.
I see. That's interesting how you comparative states, you kind of look at, okay, what systems are in similar sized, populations, et cetera, rural, metro sort of mix combined and size of population and see what works and what doesn't, sort of these best practices. And that's what these businesses like yours and not-for-profits sort of try to bring to bear, like, hey, we've done the research here. This works. Let's evaluate a company, partnering with a company and the state here and create a program. So program development, policy development, is that sort of the sort of maybe summum bonum of what your work is?
Yeah, I think that's a great description of it. I mean, I think I really think about it as we're building bridges and we're connecting dots because we see lots of great work happening across the community. We meet lots of amazing leaders in every sector. And sometimes, you just need somebody to stand up and be the one who pulls folks together. The example I always hear about is, the idea of the dance party. One person dancing by themselves looks a little crazy, but then you bring somebody else in and maybe 4 people start dancing and soon it actually becomes a dance party, right? But sometimes it's a little scary and a little lonely to be up front, but we think we can be the entity that brings more folks to the dance party and really helps push us all in the same direction.
Well, I like that vision, but a young man, again, educator such as yourself, and again, invested in Hawaii. How'd you come up? You're from the east side of the island, and what got you into education? Did you always thought you were going to grow up and be a 3rd grade teacher or something? What was your vision of yourself, and where are you from? Yeah,
so both my parents are from Hawaii. My mom was a Kalani grad. My dad was a Castle grad. They met actually working at the Horatio's restaurant in downtown Honolulu way before I was born. My mom ended up moving to Seattle for college. And so I was actually born up there, but we moved back to Hawaii where my grandparents and a lot of our family is. We moved back around middle school, and I didn't really catch the education bug until I was in college in the Boston area and had a chance to start to do some tutoring. And it was so, especially as a, maybe 19, 20-year-old, you feel like sometimes you aren't that important, but when you have a chance to meet a kid, help solve a problem for them, and then see the light in their eyes, and they get it and they feel good about themselves. I mean, to me, that was the hook. And so actually, after I graduated from college, my first job out of college was to be a special education teacher here in Hawaii at Wakiwa Middle School. So it was such a great experience to be able to come in as a young teacher and build those relationships with the kids. I mean, I think for the kids that I taught, for a variety of reasons, special education tends to be, overrepresented by male students. And so being a young male teacher, getting to build those relationships with the kids, getting to know them after school, throwing the football around, playing hoops. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I just live for, is to see those human connections. And, everything, the way I always describe it is, that was a story I thought I was going to have. And then what actually happened was my second year of teaching was the start of the Furlough Friday situation, if you remember that. So you can imagine, being a 22-year-old something teacher, all excited to start the new school year. And then you have something like that just, it's a bit of a grenade, thrown into the life you think you're going to have. And
you got a car payment.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it got me really fascinated about the idea of budgets and policy and politics, and how does something like this happen? And so that was a pivotal moment, because it, led to a career change, essentially, where I worked in the political system and I moved to DC and I did campaigns and, try to build the vocabulary and the knowledge for myself for how do these systems work. And then Hawaiikidscan really being the first opportunity I've had professionally to really merge the two worlds.
Well, that's it's always interesting. And again, we were trying to keep people here in Hawaii, but a lot of the folks, that's kind of the goal as they're coming up, is to get off the island and go get their education, and hopefully they come back. I think that's sort of the expectation. I always hear, as I talk to folks who've gone over there, got their education in the mainland. You were born, you have dual citizenship, I guess now. You were born in Washington, and so you're but yeah, that you have this access, but that's the goal. A lot of the things is, get out and explore the world, and then hopefully one day you'll bring all these resources back to Hawaii. But again, what are the some of this, people aren't coming back, and so creating this system, it seems like very important, where we have sustainable sort of maybe education here, where they can get all they need here and continue in their life right away without having to. But that's part of the Hawaii experience, though, is to go get, the athletic scholarship or the whatever scholarship and go do your time out in the mainland, and you just bring all those experience. What's your thought there? I'm sure, as having gone through it yourself, what's the word on the street with that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting balance, right? And I think, there's something incredibly valuable to experiencing new communities, new types of people, right? Getting those ideas you've never heard before. Experiencing winter and different kinds of weather. And so I think I absolutely kind of have that, that adventurous side of my brain that loves the idea of traveling and experiencing the world. And I think, though, what ultimately will make the difference for a lot of our kids who might be thinking about those decisions is the connection, right? And we have the family connection, we have the cultural connection, but that's why I go back to, if these kids could have experiences, while they're in elementary, middle, high school, with local employers, and see what it actually looks like to do the kinds of things that they want to do here, then that gives our employers, a leg up. I mean, it's a competitive world, right? And so if our local employers view it as a competitive advantage versus, some kind of faceless mainland organization that might hire a talented kid from Hawaii, then we got to think about it that way. And I know from talking to employers that, it's super expensive to have to go out and recruit for roles on the mainland and pay for relocation fees. And, you know, the family arrives and sometimes the kids or the spouse don't fit in well, and then they want to move and they're gone. And so it's a sunk cost, right? But if we can view it as, again, education is a huge part of a talent recruitment strategy, then I think that's a different kind of relationship than most kids have with work while they're growing up. I mean, I worked at Subway sandwiches when I was in high school, but there really wasn't any thought about, you know, this is something where I'm going to be thinking about it forever. But I did do an internship with one of our Congress people, and that actually was a hook for me to come back after I finished DC. So, you know, again, you never know how these things are going to play out. But I think the more connections that our kids have to this state, the better chance we have at making this place attractive for them to come back to at some point in the future, right?
Right. Well, again, it's good to have that vision out there to know that there's that, like you said, it's a competitive market. And so, you know, they may have to be offering housing pretty soon, or gas money.
Yeah.
Or an extra plug for their electric motorcycle or scooter or whatever. But, so we'll see. That's the other. I mean, it's challenging living out here in Hawaii, and you know, but for you, I mean, again, you love Hawaii, and you come back, and this is you now. So, you know, what are some of the networks, people who want to get involved in education, create, you know, other opportunities? How do they get involved, you know, as parents or other folks here in Hawaii?
Well, I'll just make an offer to anybody who's listening. You know, you can reach out to me directly. Visit our website, Hawaiikidscan.org. One of the things that we take pretty seriously as I said, a bridge builder and a dot connector is, you know, we look for ways to help link up our various members of the community. So if you're a principal and you're thinking, maybe I'm a new principal at a school and I don't know what kind of nonprofit partners might be in my region who could help me out with something, we're happy to help do that connection with them. If you're a parent and you're looking for some help or just someone to vent to, bounce some ideas off of, we're looking at a couple of ideas, including starting a parent support group, because we know that through the pandemic, it's been kind of lonely for a lot of families. And so, you know, again, we're all in this together, and I know I can't do everything, but if I can connect one great person to another, then I feel like I've done something that could be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Because again, it's much like healthcare. A lot of times, you know, people, my parents, you know, they graduated high school, and so it was just, that's it. And so it was kind of for me too, like, okay, what do I do after this? I don't have the model for what do I do after this? You know, I had to I went into the military right after and met some different people that had experienced college. And so I sort of had to learn kind of myself, what is it? How do you know, develop in education and things like that. So having that information, being able to get that out to those younger folks to see all those pathways. I see that in all the high schools. They have these different pathways that guide folks sort of down a path that resonates with them. But so if teaching wasn't your original thing, what was your original pathway? What do you think? When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I've been trying to figure out what was my answer when I was that young. Apparently, according to my parents, I think I wanted to be a train conductor. I was one of those kids that I loved, you know, going to the mall and seeing the little miniature trains, you know, going around the Christmas tree. But, you know, I think for me, I've just really been interested in this idea of, you know, what are the different ways that we can help improve our communities, and what are the different ways that, you know, we change behavior or change systems that exist, right? Like, I'm not a big believer in the status quo in the sense of we have to do everything the way that it's been done before just because, right? I think, especially with big disruptions like the pandemic, you know, the more we can think flexibly and innovatively and, you know, with agility, I think that's really, really valuable. And so for me, you know, whether I used to think I wanted to go to law and politics, but I think what I love about this particular role is, you know, I'm able to work across all the sectors and really see, you know, who are those creative and innovative people out there, and, you know, what could I be doing with them to learn from them, you know, to help uplift the things that they're doing. You know, for me, I think that's a really exciting place, especially, you know, as we're trying to figure out what does life look like as we move ahead the next couple of years.
Right. Would you consider yourself a millennial?
Yeah, I think I am a millennial. I had a cell phone in high school, but it was a big old brick. So definitely no
BlackBerry.
Instagram. Yeah, exactly. So I kind of grew up with technology, but also I remember what life was like when, you'd hop on a bike and you head out with your friends for the day and there's no way of anybody getting in touch with you. So
Awesome.
trying to think, especially as a dad now, it's something that I'm trying to think about a lot, which is, what is the balance between access to technology, but also just letting kids be kids and, kind of figure things out on their own.
Yeah. Good luck trying to keep it from them. Cause again, it's just so natural now. It's so pervasive, and it's like, well, but you can limit it, and it's, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a help there with the digital, babysitter, I think we used to call it for a minute. It's it's guilty thing as a dad, but it happens. But so now as you are looking forward and you're again trying to create a life for your family and for those around you, last thoughts. I mean, next step as we're coming out of this pandemic, we're all kind of forced onto this pandemic space. How do we get back together now? And are there conferences and things? Are there ways that we can, I know there's hearings and things like that, but how do folks who think like this get together?
We're definitely looking at a couple of different options. I mean, we used to have opportunities for folks to gather and get together, all well before the pandemic. Every once in a while we host these quarterly Jeffersonian dinners, which is our board and I would pick out people we thought were really smart, really interesting, that they didn't have to come from the same sector. And in fact, it was better if they didn't. And then we bring them together around these big questions in education and just try to figure out, right? Like, how can we address these big sticky problems? And, the idea came from Thomas Jefferson, when I think before or after he was president, and he would bring in, farmers and generals and, clergy members. And, that the whole idea is we'd have diverse people in the room working on these problems together. And I think, that Jeffersonian dinner is a really good example of the kind of organization we try to build, which is, we're a big tent organization. We see that there's value in people of all walks of life. And, at the end of the day, education is complex because it touches every single issue you can imagine, right? And so we can't be looking at addressing these problems with blinders on. We really have to be reaching out to healthcare and reaching out to, let's just say the, financial professionals. When we think about how do we get our kids financially literate and understand what it means to pay for college, I mean, literally every sector touches education. And so to me, that's why I'm never bored, is because we're always looking for new ways to partner. And we think there are good ideas out there. There are great people out there as well. And it's really just, trying to figure out how do we bring them together. Right.
But some people are liking this idea after the pandemic that, I asked you a question about as a millennial, what do you think the folks your age and maybe coming up, why not remote? Why not, let's make this permanent. You're getting, what's the tell out there?
I would not be surprised if 5 years we look back and say, wow, can you believe that, 99% of people worked in offices? Like, what a strange feeling, right? It's like, can you believe people used to ride around in horses and buggies? It may be one of those situations. And, I think for families, it opens up a ton of options. I was just meeting with a woman today who's a mom, and her kids, she worked on the Big Island, but her family had to relocate to Oahu. And she's able to stay with her employer. She's still doing great work. She's still super productive, working for this Big Island organization, but she's doing it remotely from Oahu, right? So before that organization would have lost her, would have had to go through rehiring and recruiting, and now you can maintain talent. I think that's the name of the game, right? Whatever tools we have to compete for and maintain talent, I think that's a benefit to us. And, I've met folks in Hawaii who now are able to work for, national companies from here. Maybe they have a little bit of a funky schedule. It's pretty, early morning sometimes, but I think they view it as worth it because they can be here with their friends and family and the culture and the community they love. And so I think, it's going to be on us to really think creatively about what is it that, not just millennials, but now even Gen Zs want to experience as they, go into professional working age.
Yeah, and I think all of us Gen X, and again, this top down, and how do we manage productivity if we can't, this stuff. So we all get worried about, people being at home and doing work, and I'm sure there's some issues with that. Of course, I can just phone it in is the old term that we used to use, but again, it's that apparatus now that is so available. The communication, you can share files and all these things but making those things happen isn't always easy. So organizations are trying to build up that infrastructure within their organizations to be able to communicate wherever it is, internationally or across to the mainland, and all those things. So it certainly makes opportunities like this, when we get together, David, like this for the podcast, to be able to get together. I really appreciate, all the time that you've been able to spend with us, but we still want to know a little bit more about you before we go. So again, when you're not out there advocating for education and for Hawaii kids, where do we find David?
Well, the last year, it's any time that I'm not spending, at work, it's trying to help out this little guy and give my wife a little bit of a break. She has put her job as a teacher on hold for the past year to be, basically a full-time teacher for this boy. And so, he's always keeping us busy on our toes, and, it's never dull with him either. He's a very energetic kid, but, I love being outside. I love running. I love, playing hoops and hiking. And, I think that's what makes being here so special. And, maybe it was the time I spent on the East Coast where, if you're talking about March 11th, and a lot of my, where a lot of my friends live, it's snowing right now. And the idea of going for a swim or a run is kind of nuts. So I just really appreciate the opportunities to, take in what, some of the many reasons that Hawaii is special. Awesome.
Yeah, because there is a lot to do. And listen, I know, having a child is, that's a lot of responsibility. And like you said, you kind of mentioned it a couple of times that it's big. And so, hey, congratulations on investing in that. It is an investment, and in Hawaii, I think, raising someone up here and again, teaching them those things that are, I think, important to those folks that live and work here. So, you're doing good work out there, David, and we all appreciate it very much. Any last words as you're expressing, the great work that you're doing as we head out?
I think it's easy for folks to feel somewhat overwhelmed just because, it seems like every couple of months there's some sort of big historic event that's happened. And, it's scary, but at the same time, I do see lots of examples every single day of community resilience, and especially our kids. Our kids have been through so much, but, they're just as amazing as they were before. And so, yes, it feels easy to doom scroll on your phone and feel like, things will never get better. But
wait a minute, what was that? Doom scroll?
Have you not heard of doom scrolling?
Listen, you got to enlighten the Hawaii Boss podcast team here. We have no idea what you're talking about.
All right. Well, I didn't know I was coining some new phrases, but I think doom scrolling is the idea of when you're, either on, social media or something like, CNN or a news site, and you're just scrolling. It's like, what horrible thing am I going to see next? And sometimes
it's depressing.
And that's, the news has always been that way, right?
Right.
If it bleeds, it leads. But I think especially these days, it feels like it's just one nonstop thing after another. So, my message is always, yes, we can't ignore all the problems in the world, but we also shouldn't feel paralyzed by it. There's great stuff happening in education. Our kids, I think, they've really impressed me by how strong they are. And so I think, if we can keep focused on, a positive vision and try not to get so stuck in feeling like it's hopeless, I think that does matter.
Right. And what a beautiful way to do it here in Hawaii. Put down that phone for a minute. It's okay. You don't have to have it attached to you until they attach it to you, I guess, in the near future. but until then, you can put it down, go get out in the water, go up on the mountain, and or go see your family on the other side of the island and enjoy what is Hawaii.
Exactly. And that's what, I think that's what we're all trying to do, right? And that's why we're here, because we care about this place and we see how special it is. So, anybody who wants to come along this journey with us, like I said, you can find us at Hawaiikidscan.org or Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Hawaiikidscan. And if you shoot us a message, I'll personally respond to you. And we're always grateful for every partnership that we get.
Great, David. And again, we appreciate your time coming on the podcast. We knew we came to the right place to find out about education in Hawaii today. And we'll look forward to hearing lots of progress in the future if you're able and willing to come back on and talk about what you're doing.
Thanks, David. A pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah. Until next time, aloha.
Aloha.
Make sure to subscribe to Hawaii Boss and follow us on social media at Hawaii Boss Podcast at the links in the description. We'll see you soon in the boss's office.